Greetings, sailors, and welcome back to World of... Oh, wait, hang on a minute. Something's different. Can't quite place my finger on it. I wonder what it could be. So, as you may or may not be aware, there were some shenanigans with War Thunder in the past month or so. Basically, a lot of players got very, very fed up in a straw that broke the camel's back kind of way about some changes that Gaijin were planning to make. And Gaijin, to their partial credit, have decided to try and make some amends with the player base, including the very most recent patch where they decided in their infinite wisdom to finally essentially make it so that you do not have to have the researched spare parts and fire prevention equipment to be able to, fix/put out fires. So it's a bit different for ground than it is naval. I think in naval it just wasn't possible if you didn't have the parts, whereas in ground I think it's now possible to put out fires without, but only once, and you have to research it to do it twice. I don't know, there's patch notes somewhere. But basically, this wasn't really a thing up until now, and especially at the higher BRs, the higher rank stuff, you could spend a really long time with a seriously gimped vehicle because somebody could set you on fire and there really wasn't much you could do about it. And especially with ships, where there is a lot of high explosive shells being thrown around on what are quite small maps for naval combat, the fact that you would just burn to death as a really frequent occurrence, I mean, it's one of the main reasons why I basically kind of gave up on War Thunder entirely, to be honest. I mean, there were other things to do with the monetization and the things they were doing with the economy generally, which is part of the big recent outcry. But essentially, they've kind of rolled back one of the things that really should never have been a thing to begin with. I always thought it was the most ridiculously parsimonious thing for Gaijin to do, to make it so that you would have to research the ability to, have your ship crew form a bucket chain or unreel the fire hoses or whatever, because otherwise they just wouldn't know what to do, apparently. It basically was a complete dick move by Gaijin to try and force people into a premium account or buying the Golden Eagles to skip past these things, and even for a free-to-play game, that's kind of scummy. Not even World of Tanks was ever quite that bad in that particular way, although I'm sure I could have a good old rant about wargaming's monetization if I really wanted to. But we're not really talking about wargaming right now. We're talking about this and the fact that I have reinstalled it for the first time in like 3 years just to see if this one change actually makes the game somewhat worth looking at again for me, especially in terms of naval, which I never really got very far with, partly because of that very reason. Although also the first time, in fact probably the last time I covered this on the channel, the first time I actually really dipped into naval, it was still the tiny little torpedo boats and gunboats, whereas these days they have like actual cruisers and battleships and things, so it's a slightly different landscape there as well, but the maps are still kind of small for the sort of combat. Anyway, this might take a while. It's a little bit late in the evening, although in theory it shouldn't take that long, but yeah, I guess we'll see. It still takes a little minute for even arcade matchmaking. Well, there you go. I managed to fill the time somehow. So, Domination, which is a fairly standard mode for this match. Please, Wargaming, please take note. Please get rid of standard battles. I've got 2 destroyers to choose from. I've actually got one non-reserve. The reserve vehicle I can take out 3 times, and this I can't because you have to spend money to do that. And that's another thing where Yeah, Gaijin's a bit more stingy, especially these days with, well, in particular warships where you don't even have to wait for a vehicle to have finished a battle to be able to take it out again, whereas even getting a decent lineup in Naval can be hard depending on the tech tree, just because there's not that many ships. You can't have multiple copies of the same ship to sort of make up the gap, as it were. So yeah, just in comparison to the amount of ships World Warships has, this is nowhere close. But of course Warships is pumping up those numbers quite considerably with vehicles that never ever existed, and in some cases are almost fictional. So, one of the things that has definitely changed since the last time I played it is the aiming system is different. It used to be the predictive reticle wasn't... I don't think it was like this. I don't remember it being like this. We'll see when we actually spot some enemy vehicles. But essentially, at least in arcade mode, it does give you some sort of aim assist. Which is good, because you don't get that same artillery view that you do with World Warships. You get the sort of binocular view that you almost have with just the ground forces, where you essentially get a slightly higher view, but it's not really enough to give you the kind of level of zoom that you'll get in World Warships. So the extra assistance is definitely useful for an incoming noob like me. Is that someone firing torpedoes? Possibly. And like the alternative of trying to jump into realistic, or like does anyone even play Naval Sim? Is Naval Sim a thing with how short range these maps are? I don't know, but it's probably an even longer queue time for realistic, and you don't even have the slight hand holding that you get, well, more than slight hand holding, but the hand holding that you get with actually it giving you some idea how to lead your shots, because the aiming is rather different, and that sort of was another thing that rather threw me off the first time. It's definitely not just like point at shoot or give the appropriate amount of lead to the enemy vessels motion. You have to account for your own motion as well, which is kind of hard to do if you're a newbie. Like, maybe you can get the hang of it, I don't know, but does anyone play Naval enough to get the hang of it? I don't know. It's still kind of the red-headed stepchild of Gaijin's offering. I mean, to be fair, they started off with what was exclusively an aircraft game, and then somehow shoehorned, they cobbled together the code to get working ground combat in that, and then somehow on top of all that cobbled in the code to get working naval combat into that. So I'm sure under the hood it's a terrifying mess of spaghetti wires, but it's functional at least. I don't know if I can say it's any more realistic than Warships, though. Just because, I mean, if nothing else, it's such a small amount of space that you've... Like, these are not... Like, Warships is not pretending to have realistic naval battles, apart from maybe Ocean, but even then, it's unabashedly an arcade experience. And, to be honest, this is kind of not that far off being an arcade experience either. I mean, yes, we are in arcade battles, but even then, just the way it works mechanically, the previous restrictions with, your crews somehow not knowing how to put fires out, and the size of the maps, the interactions between, of course, you get players coming in aircraft, and the whole thing's just, it's hardly what one might call realistic. I mean, you can at least have some notional idea of let's say authenticity in ground battles, but I don't know that you could even apply that to this game. And plus, no anime skins. What kind of self-respecting naval game is this that they don't let you have anime skins on your cat or pirate speak captains, or yeah, okay, no, I'm being a bit silly perhaps, but yeah, it's a little, it's different, but it's a little hard to argue that this is some kind of super accurate anything. But that's fine, because frankly, in a naval combat game, most people aren't going to have the time to sit down and play it in a realistic fashion. Even something like UA Dreadnoughts, where you can have much more realistic battle times, you can still vastly accelerate the flow of time, because you don't want to have to sit around for 2 hours while you're chasing down an enemy ship and lobbing shots at them at very long range. That, for a fun game, does not make. And in terms of... Oh, there we go, I actually got the kill there. In terms of sort of realistic naval games, I think probably the only ones you can really get are... we're not flooding at all, are we? No, we took some minor damage there. Are basically sub-sims. And there is a rather sort of hardcore subset of sub-sim gamers. And even then, when's the last time an actual hardcore sub-sim game came out? They've got the more casually oriented stuff like Cold Waters, for example, but I don't think anyone would argue that was a hardcore sub-sim. I mean, what was the last one that... I see people doing playthroughs of Silent Hunter 4 on YouTube. I think that one's still very well regarded. So, yeah, aside from that, what else is there? Because I can't really think of anything. There's games like U-Boat, which people have modded to make a little more sort of quote-unquote realistic, but I don't know if you would... like, even modded, I don't know if you would count those as being super realistic. I mean, if nothing else, the fact that they have actual sort of people running around in the submarine in a physics-based manner means they had to have the crews be far smaller than they actually were in real life, because they tried having bigger crews and they would just keep getting stuck on each other. So, yeah. So it's not like it's definitely a niche thing. Me saying this is it's not a hardcore sim game. Well, yeah, there's very much not a particularly high demand for those sort of games. Even stuff like UA Dreadnoughts is going to be niche by most people's standards. I should probably revisit that at some point, actually. It is in theory officially released, but it's still a little... it has some rough edges. But the campaign's definitely a lot better than when I first tried it, and I had an abortive attempt at a campaign series on YouTube, and then they just kept patching it and things broke, and yeah. But it also just wasn't that interesting enough at that point to try and make a full series out of it. So it's the kind of thing where I kind of want to wait till they've gotten to the point where there are far less frequent campaign breaking updates kind of thing. Well, we seem to be doing alright around this cap. This Matsuki is just kind of sitting there. I don't know. I've not really played any other nations. I've done, I think, some of the small boats from way back when. Once they did the Blue Water ones, as they call them. Well, these are the Italians, obviously. I don't know if I've played any of the others. If you want to buy premiums, of course, absolutely, Gaijin has you covered. The premiums are as expensive, if not more expensive, than what you can get in World of Warships. Although, having said that, some of the armory offers for World of Warships have also been kind of ridiculous. Including a current one where they have the... God, is it the summer tokens? Colour tokens? I think it's the summer tokens. And their amazing offer, quote unquote, was for a whole bunch of... was it even doubloons or something? But basically with a bunch of tokens. And it was like, oh yeah, spend 150 euros or something. And it's probably not quite that, but it's not far off. And you basically don't even get like half the tokens you would need for some premium ship containers essentially, and the value of what's in the premium ship containers is like not even close to worth what it would cost you to buy all the tokens for the event. So yeah, wargaming value. Right, I'm trying to control my own AA gunners or my secondary gunners here, which is an interesting thing that you can do in this game that you absolutely manual control has just never been a thing in warships, of course. Oh, there we go, I got a kill. Oh, I might take a hit here though. What is that? Oh, it got me. Yeah, it might be interesting to try it, but yeah, that's not a thing that they'll ever, I think, let you do. Sadly, maybe I should head up north a bit. This middle cap, the B, is meant for the little boats, and then C is like a really quite close quarters area for the destroyer-sized stuff. Yeah, it's kind of hard to avoid getting killed by aircraft, but hey, at least I got an air kill there. I'm pretty sure Navy Field let you do that as well. It let you manually control your AA guns and possibly your secondary armament, but I played Navy Field very briefly back in the day, and I think it's still going somehow. And there was also a Navy Field 2, which was, I believe, by a different company, which again I played incredibly briefly and cannot really talk about. But yeah, while it might be interesting to have it as an experiment in a World of Warships, like I don't know if we're massively missing anything by not having it. It's certainly going to be against Wargaming's philosophy of trying not to add too much complication to things, although they say that and then sometimes they turn around and add a bunch of complication to things. And sort of completely seem to go against whatever notion they had of keeping things unified and not confusing for a player. Right, are you close enough to... Right, you actually, I do have the option of and I don't have any loaded, but like proximity fused 120mm ammo that you can fire at planes, but I don't, yeah, like I said, I don't have any loaded. But I don't know what the range of something like that would be. Certainly not in range of my couple of, what are they, 20mm cannons, something like that. Yeah, I should have picked a different spawn point. This is clearly much too far away. We're losing this one as well, so yeah. Oh well, I might cut ahead a bit here because this is not particularly thrilling gameplay. Right, this JU is getting a bit close. They've just dived on, I presume, a torpedo boat of some kind, but yeah, they're definitely getting a bit fresh. Possibly at the edge of what's useful. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to try and dive on me now, but they might very well. Certainly a bigger target than a torpedo boat. Oh, critical hit. I don't really know what the correct procedure is if there's a plane trying to get on top of you. I mean, do you turn more broadside to make it a bit trickier for them? Bear in mind, this is all very stock crews. So things like rearming of the guns and aiming and all that kind of thing is going to be pretty much its absolute worst level. Which is, like, I still honestly think Warships absolutely beats tanks and War Thunder in how it handles crews, especially these days. But the fact that they decided to not bother with low skill crews being an active detriment. The base stats of your ship do not change from having like a, you know, no point captain to no captain at all. Some obviously can change with certain skills like torpedo rearmament and such like, but yeah, unlike, say, World of Tanks or this game, where low skills or even under 100% crews in World of Tanks is a pretty huge handicap. At least in World of Tanks, they finally followed what World of Warships did quite a long time ago at this point, and made it so that everybody gets the Sixth Sense skill essentially for free, because that was a huge difference between the haves and the have-nots. Of course, there's not really an equivalent in this game, but yeah. Somebody having a higher skill crew versus a lower skill crew is going to make a pretty huge difference. Right, I probably accidentally fat-fingered my keyboard controls there. Probably want to... About to get bombed? Dunno. Right, I can try some torpedoes. That guy is awfully close. The range finding takes a minute. Oh. Why are we not putting torps out? I don't know. Also, that's an island. And that's a bomb. Yeah, destroyers aren't really the best for trying to get in this area, but hey, what are you going to do? I don't think there's even time now to... No. Oh well. I didn't get to do much in that one. I think I shot down one aircraft. Got one naval assist. Yeah. Which is... yes, okay. Thank you. That's something. Did I get a free part? I don't know. I actually got a whole 2,000 silver lions. There you go. How generous of you. And I did complete some modifications as well. So this is all very stock at the moment, as you can see. So yeah, I probably will play this a little bit more. I'm interested to see if there are any other people that watch my channel that have played Naval despite wargame. Not war. I'm so used to bagging on wargaming, despite Gaijin having made it extremely unfun for players to do so. But some people are masochists and persist with these things anyway. And maybe maybe you're out there and you're like me and you're thinking, wow, actually I can put fires out and stuff now without having to research stuff first, because that was utterly dumb, and I'm glad that's not a thing anymore. So maybe you'll be tempted back by that. Who knows? I don't think I'll be going back into tanks much though. I mean, as I said, I didn't really get very much far with tanks or planes for the Italians, but yeah, maybe if Clyde or somebody drags me in, now that I've got it installed, I might decide that I would join them. But otherwise, I'm pretty much just going to be trying out ships again. And it was purely because Gaijin is trying to remove their something from their other something. I'm sure you can think of a suitable saying in some language there. Inserts the applicable body parts and or objects in that sentence, possibly. I don't know. Anyway, I'm starting to lose my thread of sanity, so I should probably wrap things up here. And yeah, so like I said, do let me know in the comments, and otherwise you can do all the usual things down underneath the video. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more.